Hey guys, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andre Seegers, and this time we're joined by Derek Binner and Ash Paulson to discuss all the new Twilight Princess HD news. So, let's get started. Alright guys, so perhaps surprisingly, there's been a few details that came out about Twilight Princess HD that weren't really, explicitly confirmed. Because we had the Famitsu scans, which in the article itself, as far as we know, didn't really disclose anything new. But if you take a look at the screenshots, we found out that, at least in one of the tier collecting sections, the Tiers of Light, you now only have to collect 12 of them instead of 16, and we also saw that, at least late in the game, your maximum rupee count is up from 1,000 to 2,000. So those are, relatively minor changes. Now on top of that, there was also an Amazon France description of the game, which disclosed a ton more, including how Amiibo work. So among all the details we now know about is the fact that there's going to be a hero mode available from, I believe, the start of the game, which doubles the amount of damage you take, and you can switch between the two difficulties at apparently any time. There's going to be a touchscreen inventory, a la Wind Waker HD, and then it also announced how Amiibo will work. So if you use any of the Zelda line Amiibo, you can apparently, they apparently function as assists. So you can restore your health as well as your arrow count, among, I think, other options. And then finally we know how Wolf Link Amiibo works, and that is it will unlock a brand new dungeon in the game called the Twilight Cave, on top of also having some functionality that ties into Zelda Wii U, which we already knew about. We just don't fully know what that functionality is at this point. So that's a lot to take in. So I thought we'd get your thoughts on, any of this, any or all of this. And I kind of know where you fall on this, Ash. So let's start off with Derek first.
Most of these changes are good. I mean, having the better inventory, great. Tightening up the Tears of Light quest, great. Increasing the rupee count, definitely good. These are all excellent changes. The only thing that's a little unsure about is the Amiibo support. I don't know, getting extra arrows off the cuff. I mean, it's not like Twilight Princess was that hard of a game to begin with, so that doesn't really do much for me as far as, yay, functionality. The new stage... the new dungeon, I guess is the better term, I'm sort of split on, because, again, it's that problem of Amiibo. Yes, that has great functionality. You get a brand new dungeon if you have the Wolf Link Amiibo. But then, for people who don't bother with Amiibo, wow, they're losing out on that dungeon, and why can't this just be DLC or something extra for the game in and of itself? Mm-hmm. It's that very weird conundrum. But overall, I think these are good changes. I think, the non-Amiibo stuff is definitely the highlight, and it seems to be progressing pretty well.
Yeah, like you said, Derek, I think a lot of the non-Amiibo related stuff is great. Touchscreen inventory, we figured that was coming. That's nice. Hero mode, as long as hero mode only doubles damage you take and doesn't remove all heart container drops, that's exactly what I was asking for, and if that's actually what's going to happen, I'm super excited about that, because Twilight Princess is already one of the easiest games, pretty much, I think, that I've ever played. Certainly one of the easiest Zelda games, easily. And so I was not looking forward to kind of, having my hand held through that game again. So, hey, if I can have hero mode on from the beginning and take double damage without having all heart container drops disappear, I'm all about it. I think that's great. I hate the Amiibo support, though. Like you said, Derek, the game's already easy. I don't need regenerating health or arrow refills on top of that. But more than that, it's just not imaginative. If we're going to have a new dungeon, I think that's super cool, but I'd rather that dungeon be organically built into the world like it was meant to be there, and not like this thing that obviously stands out that can only be opened via Amiibo. That feels so artificial to me. I'd rather it be built into the world naturally. And I just, it's such a waste. We see Skylanders, and we see Disney Infinity, and those figures are being used in such imaginative, interesting ways. And then we've got Amiibo, and they're such cool figures, but they're used to do things like unlock dungeons and refill arrows. It's just the same thing we keep seeing with Nintendo and Amiibo support, and I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, I actually totally agree with pretty much everything you said. I like a lot of these changes, and we'll touch on more on those later probably, but the biggest thing here is, of course, the Wolf Link dungeon, which we're calling the Twilight Cave. And on paper, that actually sounds awesome. That is some meaningful new content. Like, they are adding, that's a big addition to the game, and something we haven't really seen much in Zelda, before. Like, okay, actually, here's a weird thing about this dungeon, right? There's a couple weird things. Wind Waker HD is a game that could have really used a new dungeon. Twilight Princess had a ton of dungeons, and really a new dungeon isn't something a lot of people I think were clamoring for. Like, it wasn't something this game needed.
Yeah.
With that said, it's more content that's cool. However, locking it behind an Amiibo is what gets me, and it's not even the Amiibo specifically. It's just the fact that it's almost like breaking the fourth wall, right? Like, I don't know how they're going to introduce that in a natural way, where it's like, I don't know, can you, like, find this dungeon naturally and be like, sorry, you can't access this till you find the Wolf Link Amiibo in the real world? It's like, I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. It feels a little bit weird, like, it kind of does break the immersion of the game, if you need something outside the game to fully experience the world they've created.
What would even the reward be for completing the dungeon? Like, I've never actually beaten Link's Awakening, so that extra dungeon, what did that give you in that game? Is there something they could do comparably to in Twilight Princess?
So in that case, it gave you, it was a color dungeon, so the puzzles are based around color, and you could choose between, I believe, armor or a powered-up sword. So, I forget the exact details, but it'll basically make you take half damage, or you can inflict double damage on enemies, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So, effectively, it made the game easier. Which is fine, but it does throw off the balance of the game. So they could do something like that here too, where you'll get like a new item or something that makes you stronger. But then that has if they do something along those lines, that's going to make a game that's already pretty easy even easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and what was cool about the way it was done in Link's Awakening Deluxe too was that it felt like the dungeon was built into that world. Like, you had to find it. It was built into the game somewhere where you wouldn't have thought to look the first time around if you'd already played Link's Awakening. So it felt like it was supposed to be a natural part of that world, like a natural extension that was kind of cool for people who'd already played the original version to come back and look, oh man, this wasn't there before, but it feels like it always was. Which, in terms of Twilight Princess, I'm not sure if they're doing the same thing, if they're telling us beforehand, hey, there's this new dungeon, but you need the Amiibo to unlock it. And furthermore, if they're only selling the game with the Amiibo anyway, at least so far that's what they're doing, why even bother? Like, everyone's going to have the Amiibo who buys the game, so why lock it like that in the first place? Like, there's just so much that's just wrong with Nintendo's mentality in terms of how they actually use Amiibo that I don't get it. I don't know what their angle is.
It actually punishes people who buy the game digitally, because they don't get the Amiibo that way. So now they get this digital game, and I mean, I'm sure they'll release the Wolf Link Amiibo by itself, but that's still, they have to wait in order to access that dungeon despite paying for the game. And it's that weird conundrum that the Amiibo brings.
Well, so here's a thought. We already know the Amiibo is going to work in Zelda Wii U as well. So what if the dungeon is key to that? Like, what if you find an object in the game like that doesn't really have much use in Twilight Princess itself, but they can then carry over to Zelda Wii U? So it'd be kind of like a Banjo-Kazooie stop and swap situation, where something you do in the previous game and carry over to the next one, and maybe the Wolf Link Amiibo acts as like a vessel for that to transcend time, or however they want to present it as.
You know what? If they take that angle with it, I will take back everything I'm saying right now, because that would be so cool. It would be like the return of Stop and Swap, and I would love that, because I always loved that idea, and it never actually came to fruition. So to have that happen in Zelda, I think would be incredibly cool. Just to, to unlock something that doesn't have use in Twilight Princess itself, but make you kind of brainstorm to yourself, man, what did this thing that I got from completing the Twilight Cave, what's it going to do in Zelda Wii U? That's some really fun kind of organic speculation, and I think that would be a great way to drum up some additional hype for the upcoming game.
Yeah, total agreement. That's a really brilliant idea, and all kinds of speculation would pop up about what this item does, what it could mean for Zelda Wii U, and the hype would just build up naturally from that point. And bonus, you get a fun new dungeon in Twilight Princess, so you do get something tangible in Twilight Princess, and something that will help you and build and just helps on multiple levels for Zelda Wii U. So yeah, that's actually a really good idea, Andre. I doubt they'll ever do it though.
Yeah, I actually think that would be awesome, because I grew up with Stop and Swap, and the fact that it was never completely fulfilled, I guess to some degree it was with the XBLA remakes. But, you know, the fact that it wasn't fulfilled on the original system, like, killed me. I always thought it was an awesome idea, being able to carry something from one game to the other. I think it would actually be pretty cool if they present it in that way, and maybe that is what they're doing here. However, it depends how they do it. It still has the potential. I mean, I can't see how they can present this without still breaking the fourth wall.
Well, maybe they'll present it as, like, this is a Wolf Link exclusive dungeon. Like, you can only use Wolf Link, and you gotta use him in new and interesting ways, and so you have to have the howl of the Wolf Link, and, you know, then it'll say in quotes. Like, I can understand you have to say outright that you have to use the Amiibo, but try to frame it as much as possible and not have the game itself like, you need the Amiibo. It's like, no, enter as the wolf, and you need the special howl. Please scan the Amiibo. That's at least a nice compromise, in my opinion.
I guess it'd be a compromise. I'm concerned about it being cheesy, right? Like, you know, kind of like, you know, in Metal Gear Solid, you know, when you had these super serious codec conversations, and they're like, press the B button to use your gun, or...
That was kind of tongue-in-cheek, though.
It was. No, I agree. It was tongue-in-cheek. I agree. I don't think Zelda could pull off something quite that
unless
nature.
It's Triforce Heroes.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's if the entire game's designed around it, but Twilight Princess isn't. And it's probably one of the more serious, at least the way they present it, one of the more serious Zelda games, I think.
I mean, I'm not so sure that they need to go out of their way to not, you know, mention the, you know, the Amiibo itself, just because look at what Skylanders and Disney Infinity do. I mean, it's pretty implicit in both of those games that you're using figures. They don't, you know, they don't try too hard to make it seem like these figures are actually real characters. So in that sense, I mean, as long, you know, with the way they talk about Amiibo in games so far, it hasn't been a problem. It hasn't, you know, like being asked to scan the Yoshi's Woolly World, you know, or scan the Amiibo in Yoshi's Woolly World to unlock the costumes never really pulled me out of the experience. Same thing with like Hyrule Warriors or really any other Amiibo support so far. I mean, even though it hasn't been interesting, just seeing the word Amiibo in game hasn't really pulled me out of the experience, so that wouldn't really bother me.
Well, the distinction I would draw, though, is in the cases you mentioned, I don't think there's really much of an experience to be pulled out of.
Sure, yeah.
Whereas Twilight Princess HD, you know, Zelda games in general do, like, they offer these immersive worlds that,
right,
you know, that you're exploring, and I'm concerned about. I mean, I'm just concerned about like breaking that immersion. You know, that you need an outside real-world item to access something in the game. It doesn't quite strike me as being the same as scanning in content like from a menu, like such as a Yoshi's Woolly World or something. I don't know. It feels different to me here.
No, that's fair. I mean, and I will say, I think it would be cooler if this Twilight Cave thing was maybe like a post-game, you know, kind of bonus for people who complete the game, and then you like unlock this new side quest. Like, okay, you've done everything, but hey, we've heard you know, they've uncovered these new ruins or something, and you know, we don't know where they are, but you know, they're somewhere in the world. Go find them, and then you have to go look through this world that you know very well now by this point for something that wasn't there before but is now. And I think that would be the ideal way to present something like this. But you know, they're trying to sell Amiibo, and I get that. But I agree with you that, you know, locking this behind Amiibo and kind of presenting it in that way isn't ideal.
What about a sort of another idea would be to, like, okay, it's a Twilight Cave, right? Well, it's a cave that's blocked off, and you have no way to access it, and it just has a sign that says Twilight Cave, so you know what it does. So on the main menu, before you even enter the game, that's when you scan the Amiibo, and that way you don't have the immersion broken. You just scan it. It's otherwise if you don't have the Amiibo, the cave is blocked off. There's just a sign. There's no mention of the Amiibo at all. Just Twilight Cave, and then at the main menu is like, scan Amiibo to unlock Twilight Cave, and you scan it, and there you go.
Yeah, I mean, that actually would work. I don't think it's a particularly great solution, but that would work. But contextually within the world itself, like from Link's perspective, you know, maybe I'm getting too like in depth here, like think about this too much. It's like, why did this change? Like, there's no reason for this change. Whereas Zelda's always been pretty clear about, you know, cause and effect, right? You do something and it changes this in the world. Mm-hmm. I do have one other thought that they could present it as. Like, maybe they could treat it as kind of like a tearaway type thing, where, like, you, the player, have a presence in this world, but more as, like, in this case, like a god. It's like, you know, you scan in the Amiibo, and the god is granting their power. It's able to, like, lift away this rock blocking this cave or whatever. And then, you know, in this case, the Amiibo would be the god, I guess. And so when let's say you retrieve an item from the cave that can be used in Zelda Wii U, that's what they end up doing, then the item would be like pulled away back into the sky or something for use at a different time, where it's then being saved to the Amiibo.
Right, I see. So providing some sort of in-universe story-like context for...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, God's always been a part of the Zelda game, so I think that'd be one way to kind of work around it while still trying to be immersive. So,
I mean, frankly, I don't think Nintendo's going to care about that at all in terms of the actual presentational element of it. That just doesn't seem like something they would be too concerned with.
Yeah.
So my guess is it really is just going to be kind of a you scan the amiibo, oh, you've unlocked the Twilight Cave, and that's it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that would be a little more interesting if they kind of tried to stay in universe for it. Sure. I think the best thing would be if beating the Twilight Cave then let you go unlock a new dungeon in Wind Waker, because
oh, that's never going to happen.
I know. Like, the Twilight Princess already has like 1 million dungeons. Like, Waker's the one that needed it.
That is the weirdest thing about it, is this game already has a ton of dungeons.
Yeah.
And, another one is the last thing we needed. I would actually be far more interested if they had the Amiibo unlock, like a something new in the world, like besides a dungeon, like a new shop or something. I do like the idea, again, of maybe bringing something from this game into the next one, if it ties into the dungeon, so...
Yeah. No, I think that would be the ideal thing, like you said. I whatever you get for completing the Twilight Cave, I wanted it to have nothing to do with Twilight Princess itself. And I wanted to have everything to do with Zelda Wii U, because I think that would be much more interesting.
And we already have seen some potential tie-ins with Zelda Wii U as well, like such as what appears to be the Bridge of Eldin in the game. Suggesting, I'm trying to remember, was it that the bridge was new? Yeah, it looked new in Zelda Wii U, so I think the game would take place before Twilight Princess. So yeah, that'd be pretty interesting if it could transcend time like that. Future Link throwing past Link a bone. So
yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool. Like I said, especially if we're still adhering to all this timeline stuff and the canon. I think using this this Twilight Cave, whatever, as kind of a vessel to expand that, I think would be pretty cool.
Oh my god, that is going to throw a wrench in the timeline, though.
Oh, like this timeline isn't already screwed up.
Yeah, more than it already has been.
So there are a few other changes that we haven't really touched on much yet explicitly, and that's the fact that they're upping the rupee counter, they're lowering the tiers of light, and then they're adding the touchscreen inventory from Wind Waker HD. And I think these are all awesome improvements. I loved the addition of the touchscreen inventory of Wind Waker HD. Allowed you to switch weapons seamlessly. Especially with the fact it gave you something to do while on the boat. Because normally there was nothing to do except moving the camera around. And now you actually had something you could do. You could look at your map, you could change your inventory around, you reassign it to different buttons. It sounds like a small thing, but I actually really liked it. And it kept you immersed in the experience without going to a pause screen to change that stuff around. And the fact that it's here, even though we expected it, now that it's confirmed, I think is awesome. And I think that will also streamline the experience along with reducing the tiers of light, which is also, I think, another great idea. Now, granted, it's going to depend on which ones they removed, but the fact that they're already modifying the game to this, to some degree, is promising. I love that they're doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a touchscreen inventory is one of those things. It's kind of easy to overlook. Kind of like off TV play is kind of one of those things. Like, it's expected and it's a gimme and it's not that big a deal. But no, it really is a big deal. That's one of those kind of behind the scenes tweaks that really does completely enhance the way the game is played. Yep. And I wouldn't say just for Wind Waker. I mean, it made a huge difference in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on 3DS as well. Having that makes all the difference in terms of the flow of the gameplay. So I'm all about that. The only thing about the rupees, I think it's great that you can carry more rupees. That's not a bad thing. But if I remember correctly, the problem wasn't so much about how few rupees you could carry, but it was more about the in-game economy. There just wasn't very much to buy, period. Mm-hmm. So I don't think having more rupees to carry, it's just going to make it so there's a little longer before you start getting that message. Oh, you can't carry any more rupees. Better put these rupees back that you just found. But without more to buy, I don't think it's really going to matter.
But now you can wear that rupee armor much longer, or twice as long.
Oh yeah, because the game's already so hard that you need to use the magic armor.
That's another complication, right? By raising the rupee counter, it does have a side effect, making the game even easier now. Now you have less odds of running out of money now, because in the original game, for me at least, I would max out my rupee counter constantly, so I kept getting that stupid message, which is really annoying. And then the fact that if you get the magic armor, I believe it made you invincible, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And the fact you can now potentially be invincible longer could be a problem. However, maybe they're rebalancing it. Maybe it'll burn the rupees twice as quick.
Right.
Or maybe they're changing the economy completely and making things more expensive.
That could be. Or maybe they'll even give you new things to buy. Maybe they're going to flesh out the world a little bit more, add a few new things to do. Maybe they're not. Who knows? But they could be rebalancing it entirely, which I think that would be a smart thing to do.
Yeah, I think so too. I just hope they really just change the in-game economy, either make things more expensive or just add some more things to buy. I don't know what exactly that would be, but yeah, I mean, there just wasn't enough to spend rupees on in the original game period.
Mm-hmm. We pretty much covered most of the new stuff. I think we touched on everything. So that raises the question though of what else do you want to see? We kind of have some idea now of what they're doing to massage the experience. It seems like. Do you have any other expectations now? Perhaps informed by these changes we know about.
Not really. Mainly because they're doing what I kind of expected. I was hoping they would tighten things up. I'm curious whether they're only tightening up the Tears quest, or they're going to do other things as well. But that definitely was the easiest one to fix. But it's a good sign that they're trying to work on this, trying to make it better. And I mean, I'm definitely more intrigued by the game after hearing about these changes. But I can't think of anything off the top of my head to fix outside of the outlandish things that we've already said before.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of gameplay, it's kind of like you said, Andre. They've been massaging the experience to the point where it's a little less rough around the edges. It's a little more streamlined. It plays a little more smoothly, and that's what I think Twilight Princess needed. I'm not sure if it'll be enough to elevate it to God tier Zelda status in my eyes, but that's why I'm looking forward to replaying it, because it might really improve the experience for me and kind of replace my initial kind of average memories of the game. So gameplay wise, I think I'm pretty good. Especially with hero mode, if they actually do keep the heart container drops in for enemies. But more than that, though, and I know they're not going to do it because this is Nintendo, but in a perfect world, I would really like to see them rework the music, and not the soundtrack itself. The soundtrack's great, but just orchestrate it, or at least upgrade the synthesizers used. Because honestly, the synths used in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and even the better ones used in Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, haven't aged well. Honestly, they sound like they come from kind of a cheaper game, in my opinion. So I think if they could just upgrade that and just either orchestrate or arrange the soundtrack in some way, I think that would make such a huge difference, at least for me. But I know they're not going to do that. So I will say that in Wind Waker HD they did do some minor upgrades to the music. It wasn't that noticeable, but it was there. So that's what I'm kind of expecting for Twilight Princess, at least.
While orchestrated would be awesome, yeah, they're not going to do that. But I think even if they just enhanced it to the degree they did in Wind Waker, I'd be okay with that.
It would be better than nothing, for sure.
So I mean,
some effort in that front.
Yeah, exactly. As long as they put some effort into it, I'm okay with it. But fully orchestrated would be awesome, and hopefully that's what we'll get from Zelda Wii U.
Yeah.
Let's see. For me, I mean, the main thing is, I know the biggest thing they need to fix still, of course, is the opening. I think that is still the key thing they need to fix here. That's
a good point.
Yeah, the beginning of the game, and I think the fact that they're modifying how the tiers work might hint at them. They're already playing around a bit with how the game, with the structure of the game. So I'm hoping that means they are retooling how the beginning works as well. However, with the tiers, that's a pretty easy thing to fix. They're just omitting things. Whereas I think it'd be a little bit tougher with the opening. Although they probably could just straight up cut some of those missions, and no one would be none the you wouldn't be you'd be none the wiser unless you had played the original game.
Yeah.
They were pretty inconsequential to the whole experience, I think. So yeah, I think that's still number one they need to do. Something else, I still want to see them. I'm hoping to still add new things to do in the world. We kind of touched on this with the economy and having more things to buy. I just want to see, maybe some more activities in the game, more things to come across in the world,
more things to spend money on.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll really add anything, but that is really getting into the new content realm, and the only thing we've seen of that so far is the new dungeon, which is tied to an amiibo. So yeah, and then I guess the only other thing I can really think of off the top of my head is I found looking for heart pieces in the original game both annoying and pointless. Pointless because you didn't need them. There was no point to finding them because the game was so easy. And annoying because there were so many of them. Usually in most Zelda games, each heart piece consists of, or each heart container consists of 4 heart pieces. For Twilight Princess, they split into 5, which just made it that much harder to reach each milestone. It made it more annoying. While it did give you something to do in the world, like one of the few things you could do in that world to look for, I didn't feel like doing it, but there was no point again because it was pointless. So maybe by playing in hero mode, that might mitigate that factor to some degree.
I had forgotten that they'd split up into 5 for that game.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah,
that is weird. And yeah, I hope they
I think just cutting some of them and making it so you only had to find 4, like in the standard Zelda game, would work better.
Yeah, I would prefer that. Yeah, you don't really need to split heart pieces or heart containers into 5 pieces.
Yeah, especially because, again, it felt so meaningless in the original game because you didn't need them. So,
yeah.
Like, usually I like going on my way to look for them because you reach the milestone just often enough and they helped you just enough that it felt impactful. Yeah, where I didn't get that feeling of all the Twilight Princess. I'm like, oh man, I want to go find more of these. And since I did a guide, at IGN, I had to go find every freaking heart piece container or every heart piece. So
yeah,
yeah. Well, there's still a lot they can hopefully improve on this, and we still have a little bit of time left for them to actually do it. But I mean, they're taking steps at least.
Yeah, well, it comes out pretty soon, so I imagine we'll be finding out more in the next Direct. So, unless we just found out everything about this game through the Amazon description.
Yeah, really. But there should be one more Direct. I would say timed pretty close to Twilight Princess HD's release, so we'll probably find out a lot more then.
Yeah, I have a feeling we will. And I really do think they will modify the beginning of the game. I'm just not quite sure how or what to extent yet. So
they honestly could just like drop you in front of the first dungeon in the game with no explanation story-wise. No. Oh, here's where Link comes from, Orden Village, and here's his childhood friend Iliad. None of that. None of that. Just skip all of it and drop me right in front of the first dungeon. And normally I care about story, but Twilight Princess's opening was so horribly slow. I would be fine with that.
I actually would be too. What they could do is like offer like maybe quick flashbacks to whenever you encounter a character, which fills in the gaps. It's like, here's why this character's supposed to be meaningful, even though I never felt. I know some people defend the beginning of the game because they felt connected to that village. I didn't give a shit about that village.
Me neither.
I did not care at all.
And I mean, and I cared about Skyloft even, and even then, in a city I cared about, I wished that game would just begin at the first temple because Skyward Sword's opening is similarly slow. So yeah, Twilight Princess, just drop me in front of the first temple. I'm good to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could still make it so the village is still impactful, but by making it optional. So for those who don't care or don't feel a connection to it, they can skip it. But if you want, you can still engage with the villagers and, do whatever they want you to do. But they really do need to just get you into the action as soon as possible, because that beginning just drags, and it's kind of like beating a dead horse at this point. But I do find the beginning of the game to be such an important part of the game. For me, it sets the tone of the entire game, and very seldomly does a game have a poor beginning do I end up liking it. The only exception I can think of offhand where a game didn't impress me from the get-go that I ended up loving was Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, and even that was a big hill to climb. I ended up loving that game, even though the game has a very, very slow start.
Yeah. Well, and just be clear, we're not saying that we dislike story or world building in games. I love world building in games, and I'm not one of those people that subscribes to the idea that games can't have cutscenes or games shouldn't have stories. No, I think it's great, but we are still playing a video game at the end of the day. So world building's great, but too much of it where you're just sitting there staring and watching the screen is just balance it a little better.
Yeah.
That's all. Like, just don't make me stare and do nothing in this world that I'm playing for hours, just like a little less world building and just get me into the action a little faster, that's all.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there, Ash. So hopefully we'll find out soon what else we're going to do with this game, and I'm sure we will. Alright guys, well that wraps up for us here, so thanks for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. You can find links to them in the description below as you go and keep up to date on everything we post. And of course keep an eye on GameXplain for more on Twilight Princess HD and other things gaming as well. Alright, catch you guys later. Bye.